Welcome to Healthy Kidneys After 60. I am your host, Jane Pauley, and today we are venturing into a territory that touches the lives of almost everyone watching or listening, especially those of us who have crossed that 60-year milestone. We often think of health in terms of big diagnoses or major surgeries, but what if the most critical hour for your brain's future is actually the very first hour after you open your eyes each morning? To help us navigate this delicate transition from sleep to wakefulness, I am honored to be joined by a man who has spent decades translating complex medical science into life-saving advice, CNN chief medical correspondent and practicing neurosurgeon, Dr. Sanjay Gupta. Dr. Gupta, it is a privilege to have you with us to discuss something so personal yet so universal.
Thank you so much for having me, Jane. It is truly a pleasure to be here with you and your audience. You know, in my years of practice and reporting, I have realized that we often overlook the incredible complexity of what our bodies go through the moment we wake up. It is not just about getting out of bed. It is about a profound physiological shift that, if not respected, can carry silent risks. I am really looking forward to diving deep into these morning rituals with you today because, honestly, these small, seemingly harmless habits are where we have the most power to protect our health and our longevity.
Dr. Gupta, I want to start with something very relatable for our viewers. When most of us wake up, we have this immediate checklist in our minds. Maybe it is reaching for the glasses, checking the phone, or heading straight for the kitchen to start the coffee pot. We see these as just the start of another day, a routine we have followed for decades without a second thought. But you have often spoken about this first hour as being particularly fragile, almost like a bridge that our body has to cross. Why is it that for someone over 60, this transition from the dream world back to reality is so much more than just a change of scenery? Is there something happening deep inside our vascular system or our brain during those first 60 minutes that makes us more vulnerable to something as devastating as a stroke?
That is such a profound way to frame it, Jane, a bridge. And you are absolutely right. For many people, especially as we age, that bridge can be a bit shaky. When we are asleep, our body is in a state of profound rest. Our heart rate drops, our blood pressure typically dips to its lowest point, and our blood flow slows down. But the moment you open your eyes and start to move, your body has to shift gears very quickly. It is what we call the morning surge. Your brain signals your adrenal glands to release cortisol and adrenaline to wake you up. This causes your heart to beat faster and your blood vessels to constrict, which naturally sends your blood pressure climbing. For a younger person, the blood vessels are like elastic bands. They snap into place and handle that pressure surge with ease. But after 60, those vessels can become a bit stiffer, like an old garden hose. They don't expand as easily to accommodate that sudden rush of blood. This is exactly why we see a significant spike in strokes and even heart attacks during that window between 6 o'clock a.m. and noon. It is not a coincidence. It is a direct result of this internal biological clock, our circadian rhythm, demanding a high performance from a system that might be struggling to keep up.
It is almost frightening to think that our own internal alarm clock could be setting off a chain reaction that puts us at risk. I think for many of us in this age group, there is a certain level of resignation. We tell ourselves, well, I am older now, my joints ache, my memory isn't what it was, and perhaps I just have to accept that my body is more fragile. But what I hear you saying is that while the risk is real and dictated by our biology, it isn't necessarily an inevitable disaster if we understand how to manage that shift. Could you explain more about this 6 a.m. to noon window? Is it really a matter of our bodies just being out of sync with the demands we put on them the moment we stand up? And are there specific things we do that act like a trigger for this morning surge to turn into a medical emergency?
You have hit on the most critical point, Jane. It is not about living in fear, it is about living with awareness. This window is often referred to in medical literature as the danger zone because the blood's stickiness or its tendency to clot is actually at its peak in the morning. Combine that with the natural rise in blood pressure and you have a perfect storm for a stroke. We call it a wake-up stroke when someone wakes up with symptoms that weren't there when they went to sleep. But even more common are the events that happen shortly after waking because of how we treat our bodies in those first few minutes. We often ignore the signs that our body is struggling to catch its breath, so to speak, as it moves from lying flat to standing upright. We tend to rush, we push ourselves to jump into the day as if we were still 25. What I want to share today are 7 very specific habits that most people think are completely harmless or even productive, but are actually adding immense stress to the brain and heart during this vulnerable period. The very first one is something almost everyone I know does, and it starts with that morning cup of black coffee. It sounds innocent, but the timing of that caffeine hit can be the difference between a smooth transition and a vascular crisis.
Dr. Gupta, you mentioned that morning cup of coffee, and I have to admit, I am one of those people who feels like I cannot even function or hold a conversation until I have had my first sip of black coffee. It is almost a sacred ritual for millions of seniors who feel that caffeine is the only thing that clears the morning fog. But you are suggesting that this beloved habit, when done first thing upon waking, might actually be a hidden catalyst for a stroke. Could you help us understand why the timing of this drink matters so much for someone in their 70s or 80s? And is it really a matter of life and death, or just a minor physiological spike that we are overthinking?
It is a delicate balance, Jane, because I love coffee too, but we have to look at the state of the body at 6:30 or 7 o'clock a.m. After 6 or 8 hours of sleep, you are naturally dehydrated. You haven't had a drop of water all night, so your blood volume is low and your blood is naturally thicker, more viscous. When you pour caffeine into that dehydrated system immediately, it acts as a powerful stimulant and a diuretic. It forces your heart to work harder and can cause a sharp, sudden rise in blood pressure. I think of a patient I met not long ago, Robert H., an 82-year-old gentleman living at 1420 E Camelback RD in Phoenix, Arizona. Robert was a creature of habit who prided himself on being up before the sun, and his very first move was always to brew a pot of strong black coffee. He would sit there in the quiet of his kitchen, drinking 2 large cups before he even touched a glass of water. Over time, he started noticing these strange, fleeting moments during breakfast where his hand would feel slightly clumsy, or he would struggle to find a simple word like toaster or napkin. He dismissed it as just getting older, but what was actually happening were silent TIAs, mini strokes, triggered by that sudden morning surge in pressure on his already dehydrated brain vessels. The caffeine was essentially demanding a high-speed performance from a circulatory system that was running on empty.
That story about Robert is quite jarring because those fleeting moments are exactly what so many people ignore or attribute to a bad night's sleep or a senior moment. It seems so counterintuitive that something as simple as the order of our drinks could have such a profound impact on the brain's safety. If we aren't supposed to give up coffee entirely, because let's face it, most of us won't, how do we fix this? Is there a specific window of time or a buffer we need to create to allow the brain to stabilize before we introduce that caffeine hit? And does the temperature or the strength of the coffee change the risk profile for an aging heart?
The solution is actually quite beautiful in its simplicity, but it requires a shift in mindset. I told Robert that he didn't have to say goodbye to his Arizona sunrises or his coffee, but he had to respect the water first rule. Your brain is about 75% water, and when it is dehydrated, it literally shrinks away from the skull, putting tension on those tiny, fragile vessels. I recommend a 20 to 30-minute buffer. When you wake up, your first act of self-care should be drinking a full glass of room temperature or slightly warm water. This rehydrates the blood, thins it out, and prepares the vascular pipes for the day. Only after you have replenished that fluid should you reach for the coffee. For Robert, making this one tiny change, drinking 16 ounces of water and waiting just 20 minutes before his first sip of coffee, made those clumsy hand movements and word-finding struggles disappear within a week. We are talking about giving your cardiovascular system a chance to warm up its engines rather than redlining it the moment you turn the key. It's about timing, not deprivation, and for someone over 60, that 20-minute delay is perhaps the cheapest and most effective insurance policy you can buy for your brain health every single morning.
I hear that from my friends and neighbors all the time. Dr. Gupta, they say, Jane, I just don't feel thirsty in the morning, so why should I force myself to drink water? It seems like as we get older, that internal thirst mechanism just isn't as loud as it used to be. But you are saying that not feeling thirsty is actually a dangerous deception played by the aging body. Could you explain the science of why our thirst signals fail us after 60? And how that silent dehydration specifically leads to the wake-up strokes you mentioned, even if we feel perfectly fine when we first sit up in bed?
You've touched on a very real physiological trap, Jane. As we age, our bodies become less efficient at sensing dehydration. The osmoreceptors in our brain that tell us, hey, you need to drink, become less sensitive. So by the time a 70-year-old actually feels thirsty, they are often already significantly dehydrated. This is a major concern because dehydration increases what we call blood viscosity. Think of it like this. Healthy, hydrated blood flows like red wine, but dehydrated blood in the morning can be more like maple syrup. For an older adult with narrowed arteries or plaque buildup, that syrup is much more likely to form a small clot or get stuck in a narrow vessel in the brain. This is a primary driver of the wake-up stroke. While you were sleeping, you were losing water through your breath and your skin, and your kidneys were still processing fluid. You wake up in a deficit. If you then skip water because you don't feel the need, you are leaving your brain in a high-risk state where the blood is thick and the pressure is fluctuating.
It is fascinating and a bit scary to think of our blood changing consistency like that just because of a few missed glasses of water. It makes the morning glass of water sound less like a health tip and more like a medical necessity. If we want to be proactive, what is the best way to rehydrate without overwhelming the system? Is it better to chug a large amount quickly to flush the system? Or is there a specific rhythm to drinking that helps the brain and kidneys adjust more safely after a long night of fasting?
The key word is gentle. You don't want to shock the system by slamming a liter of ice cold water in 10 seconds. That can actually cause a sudden expansion in blood volume that might spike your blood pressure uncomfortably. Instead, I suggest keeping a glass or a thermos of water right on your nightstand. Before your feet even touch the floor, or right as you sit up, start sipping. Aim for about 8 to 12 ounces of lukewarm water. Drink it slowly over the course of 5 minutes while you are just starting to move your senses. This slow rehydration allows the fluid to be absorbed properly into the bloodstream and gives your kidneys a chance to start filtering without a sudden surge. This simple act softens the blood, reduces that syrup consistency, and provides a literal cushion for your brain cells. It prepares you for the next steps of your morning because, as we are about to discuss, standing up and moving is the next big hurdle for the circulatory system, and having that fluid on board makes that transition significantly safer for your heart.
Many of us have this habit of waking up and then just sitting on the edge of the bed for a long time, maybe checking the news on our tablets or just staring out the window while we try to fully wake up. It feels like a gentle, low-impact way to start the day. But you've cautioned that sitting still for too long right after waking can actually be a silent setup for a blood clot. Why is being sedentary in those first 20 minutes so risky for a senior, and what is actually happening in our legs and our circulation when we think we are just resting?
It's one of those invisible risks, Jane. We think that because we aren't exerting ourselves, we are safe. But for the aging body, gravity is a constant force that we have to manage. When you sit on the edge of the bed for 20 or 30 minutes without moving, your blood begins to pool in your lower legs. As we get older, our veins lose some of their elasticity, and the valves that help push blood back up to the heart don't work as efficiently. This creates a state of stasis where the blood is just sitting there getting stagnant. This is exactly where microclots can begin to form. I remember a patient, Frank M., who is 79 years old and lives at 88 N High Saint in Columbus, Ohio. Frank was a very sharp man, but he had developed a habit of sitting on the edge of his bed for nearly half an hour every morning, scrolling through news on his phone. He thought he was being careful by not rushing, but he started experiencing what he called morning brain fog and a slight tremor in his hands. He even had moments where his vision would go blurry for just a few seconds. When we looked into his routine, it became clear that his blood was pooling in his legs, and his brain wasn't getting the fresh, oxygenated blood it needed to turn on for the day. He was inadvertently starving his brain while trying to be rested.
It is so easy to see how Frank and so many others could fall into that trap thinking they are being cautious by moving slowly. It really highlights how the aging body requires a different kind of movement than we might expect. If sitting still is the problem, what is the right way to wake up the circulation without causing a sudden dangerous spike in blood pressure? Are there simple movements we can do while still seated that act as a pump for the blood? And how long should these actually take to be effective for someone like Frank?
The goal is to activate what we call the second heart, which is actually your calf muscles. Your calf muscles are designed to squeeze the veins and pump blood back up against gravity toward your heart and brain. I told Frank that instead of just sitting still with his phone, he needed to perform a 60-second vascular warm-up. While sitting on the edge of the bed, you should flex your feet up and down, rotate your ankles in circles, and gently march your knees up and down while seated. You can even roll your shoulders to get the upper body circulation moving. These tiny rhythmic movements act like a mechanical pump. For Frank, this made a world of difference. By spending just 1 minute doing these bedside exercises before he stood up, he was ensuring that his blood was circulating and that his blood pressure was stabilizing. He noticed that the morning fog lifted almost immediately. It's a powerful reminder that our bodies are designed for motion, and even in that very first hour, a little bit of movement goes a long way in preventing the stagnation that leads to dangerous clots. We have to move the blood to save the brain.
We are moving into a topic that is a bit sensitive but incredibly important, and that is the morning trip to the bathroom. It is often the very first thing we do, and sometimes it's a bit of a rush because we've waited all night. I've heard many stories of people having spells or even collapsing in the bathroom in the early hours. Dr. Gupta, why is the simple act of going to the bathroom such a high-risk moment for a stroke or a cardiac event in the morning? And what is the biological strain that occurs when we aren't careful during this routine?
This is perhaps one of the most dangerous moments of the day for a senior, Jane, and it's something we rarely talk about openly. There are two major things happening here. First, there is the rapid transition from a horizontal position in bed to a vertical position and then walking quickly to the bathroom. This can cause what we call orthostatic hypotension, a sudden drop in blood pressure that leaves the brain momentarily starved of oxygen. Second, there is the physiological stress of the act itself. When people are in a hurry or if they are straining, they often unconsciously perform the Valsalva maneuver, which is holding your breath and bearing down. This causes a dramatic sudden spike in blood pressure followed by a rapid drop. For an older person with fragile or narrowed cerebral arteries, this pressure wave can be the final straw that causes a vessel to rupture or a clot to lodge. I think of Linda S., a 76-year-old woman from 250 Monroe Ave, now Tulleru, in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Linda was a very active grandmother, but she had a habit of bolting out of bed the second she woke up because she felt an urgent need to reach the bathroom. On two separate occasions, she experienced what she described as a blackout, or a moment where the room went dark just as she reached the sink. She was lucky she didn't fall, but those were clear warning signs that her cardiovascular system couldn't handle the sudden pressure changes.
It is frightening to think that a routine as basic as using the bathroom could be so precarious. For someone like Linda, that urgency feels very real and hard to ignore. Is there a way to navigate this safely? You mentioned the pressure wave. How can we teach our bodies to handle that morning urgency without putting our brain at risk? And are there specific physical steps or breathing techniques that can cushion the heart and brain during those few minutes in the bathroom?
It's all about breaking the movement down into stages to give the body time to adjust its internal pressure valves. I advised Linda to follow a 3-step rule. First, when you wake up, sit on the edge of the bed for at least 20 seconds. Don't just stand up and run. This allows your blood pressure to calibrate to the upright position. Second, take slow, deep breaths as you stand up. Never hold your breath. This keeps the oxygen flowing and prevents that sharp Valsalva spike. And third, walk with small, deliberate steps. Don't rush or rouse the body into a panic. For Linda, simply slowing down the process and taking those few extra seconds to breathe and dangle her feet at the bedside before standing up completely stopped her blackouts. We also discussed the importance of not straining. If you find yourself holding your breath, stop and take a deep exhale. This prevents that dangerous buildup of intracranial pressure. It sounds so simple, but for someone over 60, these slow motion habits in the bathroom are literally life-saving. We have to treat our morning transition with the same care we would use when merging onto a busy highway. It needs to be a gradual acceleration, not a sudden floor-it moment.
Linda's story is so relatable because so many of us have had that feeling of seeing stars or a momentary dizziness and we just brush it off as getting up too fast. We tell ourselves it's nothing, but you are warning us that these are actually red flags from our brain. Dr. Gupta, how can we tell the difference between a harmless dizzy spell and a genuine warning sign of an impending stroke? And why do these signals often show up so clearly in the morning hours compared to the rest of the day?
You're right, Jane. We are masters of self-deception when it comes to our health. We want to believe we are fine. But in the medical world, those blackouts Linda experienced are what we call transient ischemic attacks, or TIAs. They are warning strokes. They happen in the morning because that is when the brain is most vulnerable due to the blood viscosity and pressure surges we've discussed. A normal dizzy spell from standing up too fast usually passes in a second or two as your body adjusts. But if you experience a blackout where your vision goes dark, or if you feel a sudden weakness on just one side of your body, or if you find yourself momentarily confused or unable to speak clearly, those are not just old age. Those are signs that a blood vessel in your brain is being temporarily blocked. If it happens in the morning, it is a loud, screaming signal that your morning habits are putting too much stress on your system. For Linda, those two dark moments were her brain's way of saying, I can't handle this pressure surge anymore. We have to take these mini events seriously because they are often the precursors to a major debilitating stroke.
It is a sobering thought that our brain is trying to talk to us and we are often just not listening. I think many people worry about overreacting or bothering their doctor for something that lasted only a minute. But when does a morning symptom become an emergency? Could you walk us through the FAST acronym again, but specifically in the context of someone who is just waking up and might be alone or feeling a bit disoriented anyway? What is the one thing they must do the moment they realize something is off?
This is the most important part of our conversation, Jane. Never worry about bothering a doctor when it comes to your brain. If you wake up and notice your face feels numb or one side is drooping, that's the F for face. If you reach for your water and one arm feels heavy or weak, that's A for arm. If you try to say good morning and the words come out garbled, that's S for speech. And T stands for time, time to call 911 immediately. Don't wait to see if it goes away. Don't lie back down to rest it off. In the morning, when your blood is already prone to clotting, every second counts to save brain tissue. For Linda, recognizing that her blackouts were a pattern tied to her morning rush allowed us to intervene before she had a full-blown stroke. If you have these symptoms, especially if they keep happening in the morning, keep a log of them and show your doctor. But if they are happening right now, don't wait. The morning is the most common time for these events, and being prepared to act is your best defense. We want to catch the warning signs while they are still just warnings, so we can change the habits that are causing them.
We often hear about the benefits of intermittent fasting or cleansing the body by skipping breakfast, and many seniors find they just aren't hungry in the morning anyway. They might just take their daily medications with a quick sip of coffee and go about their day. But you are suggesting that this empty stomach approach, especially combined with morning medications, might be creating a metabolic crisis. Why is skipping breakfast particularly risky for the over 60 crowd, and how does it play into this morning danger zone for strokes?
It's a classic example of how one-size-fits-all health advice can be dangerous, Jane. While fasting might work for a 30-year-old, the aging body needs more stability. When you skip breakfast, your blood sugar can drop, which triggers the release of stress hormones like cortisol and glucagon to compensate. These hormones further constrict your blood vessels and can spike your blood pressure. Furthermore, many seniors take blood pressure or heart medications first thing in the morning. Taking these on a completely empty stomach or worse with just caffeine can lead to unpredictable absorption and crashes in blood pressure later in the morning. This creates a yo-yo effect where your system is constantly struggling to find balance. Research has shown that a consistent morning meal is actually associated with a lower risk of stroke because it provides a steady hand on the tiller of your metabolism. It signals to your body that the fast of the night is over and it can relax its stress response.
That yo-yo effect sounds like exactly what we want to avoid when our vessels are already fragile. It seems like we are looking for a middle ground where we aren't overtaxing the system with a huge meal, but we aren't leaving it in a state of stress either. What about the modern habit of checking the news or social media the moment we wake up? We think we are just getting informed, but is that morning flood of information actually contributing to the physical stress on our brains in a way that we can measure?
Absolutely. We call it digital stress, and it has a physical footprint. Your cortisol levels are already at their highest in the morning to help you wake up. When you open your phone and immediately see a stressful news headline or a worrying email, you are adding fuel to that fire. This causes a further surge in blood pressure and heart rate. For a brain that is already navigating the morning surge, this extra hit of adrenaline can be the tipping point. I always tell my patients, protect your peace for the first hour. Give your brain a chance to stabilize its chemistry before you invite the rest of the world's problems in. The combination of an empty stomach, morning medications, and digital stress creates a high-pressure environment that your cerebral arteries simply shouldn't have to navigate. It's about creating a buffer zone of calm and nutrition to help your body transition safely into the day.
It sounds like we need a more intentional approach to that first meal, something that acts as a stabilizer rather than a burden. You've mentioned that even a small change in what and when we eat can have a dramatic effect on how our brain handles the morning. I'm thinking of those who feel they simply can't eat much in the morning. Is there a minimalist breakfast that still provides the protection you're talking about? And how does this look in a real-life scenario for someone who has been struggling with morning symptoms?
It really doesn't have to be a full-course meal, Jane. The goal is what I call a nutritional anchor. I think of Michael T., a 72-year-old man living at 401 Bayshore Boulevard in Tampa, Florida. Michael was a very disciplined man who practiced intermittent fasting, often not eating until 1 o'clock p.m. Every morning he would have nothing but black coffee and his blood pressure medication. By 10 o'clock a.m. he would often feel shaky, slightly confused, and his hands would start to tremble. He thought he was just low on energy, but he was actually experiencing significant blood pressure fluctuations and hypoglycemia. I suggested he try a small anchor breakfast, just something like a small bowl of oatmeal, a hard-boiled egg, or even a bit of Greek yogurt with some walnuts. For Michael, adding just a small amount of protein and healthy fats in the morning stabilized his blood sugar and prevented those mid-morning crashes. Once he started eating this small meal about 30 minutes after his morning water, his tremors stopped and his mental clarity returned.
Michael's experience really shows how our disciplined habits can sometimes work against us as we age. It's about listening to what the body needs now, not what it needed 20 years ago. If someone is ready to make this change tomorrow, what are the golden rules for this morning meal? Are there certain foods that are red flags themselves, perhaps things that are too salty or too sugary, that might actually make the morning stroke risk worse, even if we think we are doing the right thing by eating?
Great question. The red flags are definitely highly processed sugars and excessive salt. A sugary pastry or a very salty breakfast meat can cause a rapid spike in blood sugar followed by a crash or cause you to retain water and spike your blood pressure. You want slow burn energy. Think fiber, protein, and healthy fats. And the most important rule, water first, then your anchor meal, and then your coffee if you must have it. This sequence is vital. By putting the water and a small amount of food into the system first, you are creating a cushion for the caffeine and the day's stressors. For Michael, this simple reordering of his morning transformed his health. He wasn't eating more in terms of calories over the whole day. He was just eating smarter in terms of timing. It's a powerful tool because it's something you have 100% control over. You are the architect of your morning routine, and by choosing a stable start, you are literally protecting the structural integrity of your brain's blood vessels.
One of the most common things I hear from our audience is that they do check their blood pressure, but usually only when they feel something is wrong, like a headache or a bit of tiredness. But you have pointed out that morning hypertension can be completely silent and very deadly. Why is a single reading in the afternoon not enough to tell us if we are safe? And what is the specific 60-second habit involving a home blood pressure cuff that every person over 60 should be doing to truly understand their stroke risk?
This is a huge misconception, Jane. Many people have what we call well-controlled blood pressure during the day, but they experience a massive morning surge that goes undetected because they aren't measuring it then. This morning surge is a much stronger predictor of stroke than your average daily pressure. If your pressure is 120/80 at 3 o'clock p.m., but it's spiking to 160/95 at 7 o'clock a.m., you are in a high-risk category for a morning stroke and you don't even know it. I recommend the rule of 2. After you've had your water and gone to the bathroom, but before you have coffee or breakfast, sit quietly in a chair with your back supported for 5 minutes. Then take your blood pressure. Take it twice, 1 minute apart, and record the average. The 60-second act of measurement gives you the real story of how your body is handling the morning transition. It tells us if your medications are working through the night or if we need to adjust the timing of your doses to cover that dangerous morning window.
That sounds so much more precise than just guessing based on how we feel. It's about having hard data to share with our doctors. But what if someone does this and sees a high number only in the morning? Is the answer always more medication, Or can these lifestyle shifts we've been talking about, the water, the gentle movement, the anchor breakfast, actually bring those morning numbers down into a safer range without constantly increasing a prescription?
In many cases, yes, lifestyle is the first and best medicine. For many of my patients, simply implementing the water first rule and the gentle wake-up movements has brought their morning systolic pressure down by 10 or 15 points. It's about reducing the friction in the system. Of course, if the numbers remain high, it may mean we need to adjust the timing of your medication, perhaps taking a portion of it at night instead of in the morning to provide better cover for the dawn hours. But you won't know that unless you measure. I tell people to think of their blood pressure cuff as a dashboard for their brain. You wouldn't drive a car without a speedometer, especially on a tricky fog-covered road. The morning is that fog-covered road for your vascular system. Taking that 1 minute to check your numbers gives you and your doctor the map you need to navigate it safely. It's the most empowering 60 seconds of your day.
Dr. Gupta, we've covered so much ground today, from the hidden dangers of that first cup of coffee to the life-saving potential of a 60-second blood pressure check. It really feels like we are redefining what it means to wake up after 60. It isn't just about starting the day, it is about protecting the very vessel of our thoughts, our memories, and our future. As we wrap up this conversation, if you could leave our audience with a final thought, perhaps something to hold on to as they open their eyes tomorrow morning, what would it be?
My final thought, Jane, is one of hope and respect. We often treat our bodies as if they are indestructible when we are young, and we carry those same aggressive habits into our later years. But the secret to a long, vibrant life isn't about fighting your age. It's about respecting the new rhythm of your body. Your brain and your heart have served you for 6, 7, or 8 decades. They deserve a gentle start. If you can remember just 3 things tomorrow morning, start with water to thin the blood, move your ankles and breathe to pump the circulation, and give yourself a 20-minute buffer before you dive into the world's stress or your morning caffeine. These aren't just tips, they are acts of profound self-respect. You are telling your body, I value the life we still have to live. We can't turn back the clock, but we can absolutely change how we wind it every morning. It's been a true honor to share these insights with you and your listeners, Jane. I hope everyone watching feels empowered to take that first hour back for their health. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Dr. Gupta. Your wisdom has truly given us a roadmap for a safer, more intentional morning. I know I'll be reaching for my water glass tomorrow before I even think about the coffee pot. For everyone listening at Healthy Kidneys After 60, we hope this conversation has been a wake-up call in the best possible way. Remember, the path to a stroke-free future starts with the very first minute of your day. We are so grateful you spent this time with us. If you found this episode helpful, please be sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into the health topics that matter most to you. We have so much more to explore together. Until next time, take it slow, breathe deep, and cherish every morning. I'm Jane Pauley, and we'll see you in the next podcast.